You don't even have, do you have an opening for your show yet? Like the thing that you say?
I literally just, I'll probably start it just a minute ago.
Oh, perfect.
Whatever.
Okay, so, hi everyone. I'm taking over HYG's podcast.
Welcome to the Sweet Recorder Podcast, yeah.
So it's weird for you to sit in that seat now?
Well, I'm always sitting over there. It's, you know what, I'm very proud of myself because sitting in this side, I'm looking at all these cool banners. It's really nice.
I told
I'm
you,
looking
it's
at this all day. This blue background.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Someday I'll have
nice.
a big, backdrop, but
yeah.
This is cool.
It is cool. Okay, so we were talking earlier, and you were getting nervous, and I hope I don't. I always get nervous before interviews because I'm really scared that I'll
say something you're not supposed to.
Not even that. It's just losing train of thought or all of that. I always get really nervous about that. But this will be easy. I'm so excited because I've never actually gotten to interview someone.
I'm being interviewed by a star. This
Okay.
is like a dream come true.
No, it's not. It is. But you're also one of the most fascinating people that I know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you're wildly interesting. And every time I come over here, we always end up having great talks.
Yeah.
So
it's much appreciated.
Is it?
It's not every day you get to meet someone that you can have those talks with.
That is true. We were just talking for an hour, and I always. Last time I came for my interview, we did the same thing, and we were like,
"Yeah, dude, we talked
why
for
did we?"
2 hours before the last.
Yeah,
first
and then
time
you were
came
like,
on.
we can't. Next
I was like,
time
stop
we
talking, stop talking,
Stop
save
talking
it for
now.
the show.
Yeah. So we talked about a lot that I kind of wish that you would say on here, but I'm sure I kind of had questions around that anyway.
Let's do it.
Okay, so what I want to know, I'm just asking all the questions that I want to know about.
All right, let's get into it.
So how old were you when you started playing music of any kind?
Okay, I started playing guitar at 5. But that's a real interesting, because, they have videos of kids when they're oh, when you were 2, you were drumming on the, boxes and this and that,
On the pans? Yeah.
Yeah. So I knew, I as a little kid sitting in the car seat, I used to, I'd always move and stuff like that. But,
yeah.
At 3, I knew. At 3, I knew I wanted to be a rock star or I wanted to, be a musician.
Yeah.
And at 5, I started taking guitar lessons.
Wow.
Played that shit till my fingers bled too.
Well, how did you decide? Did you always know that it was the guitar for you? Or
yeah, it was.
Really?
And it's funny is I've had this conversation with a lot of people, hitting my own mics, with a lot of people because people that spend their lives and they don't actually know what their one calling is, or they're just they always say, oh, you're lucky, you've always known. And I always have trouble with that statement because it's true and I can't relate to them and I feel kind of guilty about it.
That's interesting.
I've always known, I've always wanted it. I picked it up, and since 5 years old, I used to practice 2 hours a day at 5 with a tiny little guitar. It's all I did.
Wow.
It's until this day, it's all I want.
Yeah.
I want more, but
no, I understand that though, because that was the other question that I had. Is obviously I've heard you play, and you're insane,
Thank you.
and it's when you're really good at something, everybody is like, oh, it's, you make it look so easy or whatever. It just comes easy to you. But I know for a fact that that's not true. Yeah. So when you felt that pull towards that, how long were you practicing to get where you are now? To the point where you do make everything look insanely easy. After I come over here for a jam session, I'm like, oh, I could totally go home and do that. And I know that I can't, but it does pop in your mind.
Well, first let me clarify. I don't think I'm a great guitar player regarding technique and making things look easy. There are some guitar players out there that are freaking 13.
Yeah.
That I couldn't do half the things they do. That being said,
of course you think that.
But let me clarify, there are guitar players that blow me out of the water technically with their own styles and stuff.
Right.
But for me, so I guess what you're asking is that when did I, at what point, how much did I have to practice, or what point did I feel like I was
how long did it's really a 2-part. How long were you practicing every day?
Okay.
For how much time? Because there's the old adage, the 10,000 hours, all of that. But also when did you start to feel like you were a musician? You clicked into that?
Good question. I like that question. So at 5, I mean, I started taking lessons, and there was only so much I could practice and learn. I was 5 years old, and I practiced as much as I could. I also just played it a lot. You know, I would learn a chord and I would play that chord for hours. I liked it.
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I my 3rd grade teacher actually taught me guitar lessons for a while. And he taught me some cool stuff. And then eventually at 11, I met my mentor, Charlie Lynn. He was the first guest on the show, actually.
Yeah.
And that's when I started learning like scales, this and that. And like, so I guess throughout that whole time, I had always practice wasn't really something that was difficult for me. I was always practicing with at least an hour a day, maybe 2 hours. I was always playing. And so the discipline side of it, I guess, kind of came early just because I loved doing it so much. At the point where I felt like I was a real musician was when, probably when I was about 13, I'd guess around 13 or 14, I got comfortable with scales. I was getting good at like soloing and jamming. And my guitar teacher, Charlie, he was very adamant about like, you know, using and applying what you learn and, you know, being able to jam, because that's, you know, that's the ultimate skill, jamming with someone, picking up an instrument, never talking to them, never meeting them, and going to town, right?
Right.
I remember I went to Rock City Studios in Camarillo. Charlie's American parents opened that up. They don't own it anymore, but they opened it up, and every Saturday was a blues jam. And I went, and I was like 13, little kid with my little like Blue Jackson guitar. And the youngest person other than me was like maybe 62. It was a bunch of old blues cats just like, you know, jamming
That's
away
amazing,
harmonicas.
though. Yeah.
And they saw me walk in like, all right, let's give the little kid a chance. And I was able to play with them.
Wow.
You know, it was just simple blues scales, but like for me, like I felt so good, and I never wanted to stop doing that.
Right.
And then I had a friend growing up that I would play guitar with for hours. That was kind of the musician, feeling like a musician is when I had people to jam with and play with. I think what that led to, though, was the idea of being able to jam always reminded you of your limits. Where, when do I run out? When do I feel like I can't go anywhere? And the idea of practice and wanting to practice so much, looking back, and I couldn't tell you this if I was 5 years old, I didn't know why I was doing it. If I was 11, I didn't know why I was doing it. But looking back, I can say that there was a sense of freedom that I wanted and that I recognized, and I had to get there. And practicing was the only way I could get there. So when I picked that guitar up and I did jam and feel like a musician, it was freedom. It was total freedom.
Yeah. Interesting. So instinctually,
yeah.
Yeah, that's how you felt. That was one of my questions too, because you mentioned Charlie. So how important, I guess you can only answer this in a retrospective way, but like being where you are now, both like in maturity and in your skill set, like how important do you think mentorship is to the process of becoming, I guess, an ever growing, ever evolving musician? Like, do you think that it's a really important part of that, or no? Or do you think it's an individual
When you say mentorship,
experience?
do you mean like a teacher, someone to...
Yeah, somebody to, whether it's a teacher or somebody that's...
a musical mentor, basically.
Yeah, somebody that's encouraging you or giving you advice or...
I think it's 100% necessary.
Yeah.
And, you know, even if you're self-taught, you have to understand that, you know, or people that say like, oh, I play by ear. People have great ears out there.
Yeah.
But there's a reason why we have theory. Theory was built off of what sounded good. That's
Right.
where theory came from, right?
Yeah.
And it's this idea that the more you understand something, the more freedom you're going to have. You know, it's like learning a language. If you learn all the words, you get to create better sentences. You can communicate more feelings.
Right.
You know, and that's the guitar's the same thing. You know, music's the same thing. And having someone teach you along the way is so important. And I think to go a little deeper on that is, if you can find someone that can teach you in person, is a huge factor. Growing up, you know, a lot of people use YouTube, and it's a great tool.
Yeah.
A lot of people are taking courses online, and they're learning all this great stuff. But having someone in the room with you while you learn something, and then applying it and sharing it with a mentor, that I think my most of my growth came from sitting in those tiny little rooms with Charlie for like 2-hour lessons and just like teaching me this really hard scale, and then him playing chords and me having to like play with him. Like those moments allowed me to go home and grow.
Yes.
Allowed me to feel it because I felt like I had someone teaching me.
Yes.
I didn't feel alone in the process. Also, like anything else, there are things that you're just not gonna know.
Yeah.
And someone needs to be there to tell you. You shouldn't have to mess up constantly to learn lessons. Like you shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when you're learning something like an instrument. It's about freedom. It's about the freedom to express yourself. It's about you have a lot of things you want to say and you're trying to learn how to say them. You don't need to just make noises until someone recognizes a word.
Right.
Have someone teach you the language, learn the language, and then speak.
Yes. I the only thing that I can relate that to that is when I'm trying to feel that freedom in a scene, it's the same thing as really making sure that you've memorized the lines, that you could do it in your sleep. So then that's the only thing, like that would be my music,
absolutely.
you know, like that education of like you can't have the freedom until it is ingrained in your brain.
Well, it becomes you don't have to think about it. You know,
like what you were saying, a second language.
Growing up, I knew a lot of guitar players that were, you know, self-taught, or they didn't take lessons. They were just like, they played by ear.
Yeah.
And more power to them, but you know, they'd always make comments, like degrading comments to me, like, oh, I don't want to get stuck in like, you know, being stuck in a scale, this and that. I'm like, but that's not what it's about. Learning this stuff, you know, once it becomes so, like you said, ingrained in your brain, you don't think, I'm not thinking about playing a pentatonic scale or like a mode or anything. I'm not thinking about that.
Yes. My
body and my muscle memory has adapted to the understanding of the shape of this thing and what sounds they make, so I can freely express. You know, it's almost like taking this leap of faith with like, I'm going to fill my brain with knowledge, hoping that someday I can speak freely. You know,
I love that. That's a really cool. I've never heard anybody explain it because I love music and I love to noodle around with different things. But part of the reason that I never call myself as a musician is because that's how what you just explained is like how I look at musicians is like this is an insanely difficult craft. It's very important to the world as well. Like music is the universal language. Yeah. So like, sure, I can, you know, write something or whatever, but I get intimidated by talking to musicians sometimes because it's one or the other. Either like somebody who's very well versed in theory or somebody like the people that you're talking about.
And once again, I'm not like a theory master. Like I think I'm terrible when it comes to that stuff. But the point is, but you also educate yourself. Like, we'll put it this way. I think the best way to, you know, anybody can pick up drumsticks and play drums. Anybody can pick up a guitar and make noise. Yeah. I can go out and tell lies. It doesn't mean I'm an actor.
Well played. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Like I can convince everyone of a lie. Yeah. And they can believe that, but that doesn't mean I'm an actor. Right. Doesn't mean I'm a phenomenal, you know, I can't dive into a role. Right. You know, it's, like, oh, well, if you can do that, sure. But does that really mean that? Does it mean just because I can convince someone of a total fib that, you know,
that I have this other
that I
ability.
can go do what you do? Yeah. Like, no.
Do you get offended when people sort of allude to being able to do what you do, that you've spent your whole life studying this and working towards this? Like, do you ever get offended when people maybe make it seem a lot simpler than it is?
I don't know. I don't think I get offended. I think everyone has their own journey and has their own path on how they get to where they want to go. Yeah. And I think, you know, music itself isn't exactly it's not an industry. You know, music itself is above that. We have a music industry, but it's not that. Yeah. And creativity in general, everyone has their own path and their own wants. And, you know, if someone wants to be at this level and stay there, then great. But I'm not gonna consider you someone great. Right. At what you do. It doesn't make you a bad person, but it just doesn't make you fucking, you know, Yo-Yo Ma. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry, like you're not gonna be that. Yeah. Offensive wise, I mean, for some people, maybe it is easy. I'm not them. Like maybe, and like, I'm not going to sit here and say that it's like the hardest thing in the world. It just takes time and want, and you really have to pay attention to who you are as a person, because like we talked about earlier, you know, a instrument of any form of creativity is just an avenue for you to express yourself. So if you don't know who you are, if you're not interested in discovering that, then, you know, it doesn't matter how much theory you know. It doesn't matter how technically genius you are. Like, it's not going to mean shit. Yeah. You know, so there's two-sided thing. I think everyone has separate skills and learns things differently, but I don't know if I would be offended if someone made it look easy or talked about how easy it was. I think I would be frustrated if someone was quick to diminish someone else's efforts because they're afraid to put it in themselves.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to name names while I'm here. I went and saw a show the other night.
Yeah.
And this guy has a lot of ego and a lot of attitude, a lot of personality. He seems to have a lot of friends. And I don't want to be too judgmental, but just looking at the scene, you can kind of get the vibe. Mm-hmm. And he talks a big game. Mm-hmm. Well, I went and saw his show. And it was the worst fucking thing I've ever seen in my life.
No way.
He had absolutely zero skills.
Yeah.
He very clearly does not practice what he does. Mm-hmm. Everything comes from a very surface level, and he's doing it purely to get the attention. And I don't need him to lie to me for me to, be convinced otherwise, because it's the truth. I've been doing this my whole life.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But the stage he was playing on, it wasn't a stage, but that for visual purposes, that's the biggest stage he's going to get.
Yeah.
And that's fine because he has his friends around him, because that's great. More power to him. My issue with that is not that he's doing it. I respect anybody that gets up in front of people and can share something. My issue is when you stand up in front of people and you say to the audience, I'm here to share my stuff. You make a statement. You say that what you have is worthy of them to listen to along with you to listen to.
Right.
So when you go up there and you provide shit, you're insulting everyone listening.
Yeah.
And I know that's really high. I have high standards for this, and I know it's really harsh. The point is it could be a song that I don't even like, but if you have clearly practiced as hard as you could,
yeah,
and you made it the best you could, and I can see that, it could be the worst sounding song in the world, and I'd still respect you for it.
Yeah.
But when people go up there and I learned the G chord and the D chord and the E chord, and I've been strumming those for the last 10 years. And they go on stage and they play the same song 15 times in a row.
Yeah.
And they can barely hold the chords down, and there's muted sounds, and they're singing off key, and they clearly didn't practice or run their set, or they didn't even think about the order of the songs. As a musician, yeah, that offends me.
Yeah.
That pisses me off, because I'm you made a statement and you insult everyone you say that, because it's about being able to connect. And if you don't provide that service, if you don't put that time into it, you're basically asking everyone else to put that in for you, and no one wants to do that.
But do you think that because over the years, obviously, our society has changed a lot since social media has come into the picture, and you've been playing music long enough to move through that whole movement. Don't you think that that's kind of a common theme in humanity recently?
Yeah, not just big, what's it called? Make it look fancy, covering it, putting this image on it so it looks good to distract. When people go up there
polishing a turd.
Yeah, if you can create enough distraction that people don't actually realize how shitty it is,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do that. This guy did, I'll give him props. He did a great job at convincing, the untrained people. He distracted them from how bad he actually was.
Right.
And
which that can be a talent in itself, I guess.
That can be a talent in itself if you want to work for a shit industry, sure.
Right.
That's, I don't like that. I think, I don't know. Like I said, I have really high standards, and I'm aware of it. I know how strict I am, but I'm not someone, I don't like to talk the talk. I walk the walk.
Yeah.
And I make sure of it.
Yeah.
Practice every day. I work my freaking ass off. I play those 3-hour shows at 5 Threads. It's original music, start to finish.
Yeah.
3 whole sets. I stress. I practice daily. I run my scales. I play the songs. I run the entire set. The order of the songs, when all that stuff is thought through.
Yeah.
Because I want it to be an experience, because I know what it's like. Because when I get there and I perform, I don't want to have to worry about doing everything and making sure. I want to be there and listen to that music with you.
Right.
I'm there to share it with you.
Yeah.
And if I can't provide a positive and a good enough experience for me to share it with you, I'm not doing my job.
Yeah.
Then I'm basically saying fuck you to my whole audience.
That is such a rare attitude to have, though. And you understand that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I imagine that more often than not, you're not coming up against people that have that same attitude, and that also adds to the frustration. Because I feel the same way as you. I'm very hard on myself, and I think if you, I don't know, just the way that I was raised, when people talked about excellence, it actually means something to me, and I know what I need to do if I want to get there. But also a common theme with creatives is you never think you're good either, which I think is what allows for growth. But what do you think about that? Do you think that that's a positive thing, that you never quite are satisfied with your skill set, with...
Well, I think that means it's a few things. I think there's always more to learn, which is why we love it so much. And I think we need to start changing our perspective and remind ourselves that that is the case. You know, it's not that we're not good enough, and it's not that we think that we're bad. You know, and it's okay. Maybe if you compare yourself to everyone else in the world, sure, of course, someone's always going to be better than you at something.
Right.
But if you let go of the comparison idea and think that, why do I think I'm not good enough? Well, it's not that I'm not good enough. It's that there's more to learn, and I want to do that. So is it that you're not good enough, or have you not made the time and commitment to do what you believe to be important? You know, you're letting yourself down.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it, but don't act like you're bad, because you have put in the work and you've worked on things, and you know, you are good to a certain extent. But like, if you can't do what someone else does and you want to do that, then guess what? You have full control to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's good because it allows growth, but it's also a perspective thing. Like, you can't constantly put yourself down as a creative person, because we do it so naturally. Because we go to such a dark place. I mean, we go so deep into ourselves. It requires this vulnerability that we have to be willing to face and willing to let out, because it opens up so many great things. But in that moment, if something like kind of like, you know, like throwing a rock into a glass house, like if you throw a tiny little rock in a very delicate glass house, the entire house could come down.
Yeah.
And that's what it's like. You go into that vulnerable state. If one thought comes into your mind, like, yeah, you're going to think you're shit.
Yeah.
But I also think with all the creativity, with all the vulnerability, and with all the sensitivity and all the artsiness that all of us creatives talk about, how we're like, everything's so deep. And I kind of accentuate all this stuff because it's true, there's so much of it. I appreciate it, and I'm glad that people want to feel this way.
Yeah.
But to actually reach a level of worth it, there has to be discipline. There has to be principle, and there has to be commitment.
Yeah.
You know, people like I just the other day I had some people in the studio, and someone brought in a guest singer, and once again, not naming names, but they were talking about this writing session they did the other night, and like they got super high and they were really drunk, and they were up till like 4 a.m, and they were recording on their phone, like they were talking about all these deep concepts, and like they were like, oh man, we should really record this because it was really good. And then I heard this person sing. I was like, I can guarantee you what you did was just a alcohol, drug fueled, you know, lack of sleep. Look at me, I'm an artist staying up at night.
Yeah.
Now, alcohol and drugs, there's a lot of things that can get you to a lot of places, but if you can't, once again, back to the practicing, if you can't do what you're supposed to do, how the fuck does any of that get you to a place where you actually create something great?
Well, it doesn't.
Well, it doesn't in the first, but like if there was a possibility,
Yeah.
if you don't have the commitment, if you don't have the discipline to work those, if you can't go into that state and apply a discipline once you feel something,
Yeah.
then you're just being pulled along for the ropes, and you might never get anything done.
I love that you're talking about discipline, because I think that it's everything nowadays, to me, and from my perspective, is made to look like, you know, well, everybody's wanting things on a surface level, like we were talking about before. You know, like a lot of these kids are watching people that are incredibly successful for, I guess, being themselves. I'm trying to be respectful talking about that, but it's a little bit, it's different than wanting to train yourself in a craft. You know, there's a difference between wanting to be great at something and wanting to be famous. Those are two separate things. Both of them take discipline to a certain extent, I suppose, but like actually becoming a great at something, or being excellent at something, takes discipline, and people don't teach that anymore. It's just supposed to be like, oh, either you have it or you don't have it. Like people talking about the X Factor and everything.
Yeah.
And
which I do think exists to a certain level.
It does. But you got to back it up with discipline.
But I think I'm going to make this clear as shit.
Okay.
You never know if you actually have the X Factor until you've committed the time to become good at something.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't come out until you're fucking... X Factor comes with the foundation of I'm good at what I do.
Yes.
And that's the truth for me.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think there's different kinds of disciplines. Like you talking about fame, and like if I want to master the guitar, I can master the guitar. If I want to become famous, I don't need to master the guitar, but I need to master becoming famous.
Right.
There's a discipline to everything.
Yes.
You know, I remember growing up, I grew up in the Bieber era. You know, everyone was a Bieber fan.
Yeah.
And everyone talked shit about Bieber. I even talked shit about him when I was a fucking teenager, because that's what teenage boys did.
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, I'm being an asshole. Like, that guy's out there doing what I wish I could do.
Yeah.
And as I got older, and I love Justin Bieber's chain of events, because he messed up so much.
Yeah.
And instead of like trying to ask for forgiveness, he just changed who he was in his own life.
Yeah.
And he found what he wanted. But more importantly, he still got on that stage every night.
Yeah.
Put on a hell of a show.
Yeah.
Dealt with people in his ears all day, telling him who to be, how to do it, this and that.
Yeah.
Performed his ass off, continued to write. I mean, he was a pro.
Yeah.
He's a pro.
Yeah.
He freaking, and to come out of it and to make mistakes and come out of it and be happy, at least the way, he's portraying it, but he just got married, he's releasing an album, like he's changing his song. I was talking to his tour manager the other day, and telling me a story about like how Bieber got a lot of shit for releasing like a quote unquote R&B record recently.
Yeah.
But like that, he said, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm writing right now.
Yeah.
Like X Factor, like there has to be something to back up the X Factor like that. You have to be good at something.
Yeah.
So find your discipline.
Yeah.
Know what it is, and don't be afraid. Look, if you want to be famous, a lot of people are going to call you shallow.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Maybe it is shallow. But even the shallowest of things, in order to be great at them, you have to have discipline.
Well, I think it's a matter of just being brave enough to say what you want.
Yeah.
And be honest about it.
And
like
work
I don't
for it.
have a problem with people saying, "Oh, I want to be famous," or "I want to be a musician," or "I want to be whatever." Like I think that you should be allowed to be whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
I just have a lot more respect for people when they own it and they're honest with themselves and with other people about what it is that they're wanting to do, instead of pretending like, "Oh, I really want to be good at guitar or whatever," but what you're really after is the fame. And watching somebody like Justin Bieber in particular, when you're talking about the X Factor, like that kid can play almost every instrument.
He's a kick-ass person. Like
Yeah,
that.
like-
He'll go down in history as one of the greatest artists.
Yeah.
And people are gonna ridicule me for saying that, but he will. You just watch and see. Justin Bieber will go down as one of the greatest people to go into music.
But when you're thinking about music, and obviously tastes evolve and change over time as you get older, and like all of that. How fair do you think it is when you're working with an artist, or when people pigeonhole them and they say, "No, you're this kind of a musician. Like you can only put out this kind of music," and then they want to do something different. And
How
they're
I
like,
feel about that?
yeah, and they're like, "Well, fuck you for doing that. That's not who you are." Like, what is I guess for you being a musician, like, let's say that you're putting out a very specific album, and then you're like, 5 years later, you're like, I want to do something different. I'm going to try something different because I want to grow and change as an artist.
Yeah.
And there's no response to that. There's no positive response to that.
Well, I'll put it this way. If you can't handle losing all your fans because you decide to do something new, you should find something new to do.
Okay.
Take Metallica, for example. I'm a diehard Metallica fan.
Yeah.
I think Saint Anger is the worst album I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's a load of shit to me.
Yeah.
I love all the other albums, but Metallica changed the game every time. That's there. They continue to be artists. They continue to be musicians. Everyone talks about how they lost this and they lost who they are, but it's like, you know what? They continue to make music and do it because they want to.
Yeah, and continue to try too.
I think that situation where people get stuck, I think that comes a lot from like kind of contracts. Maybe you have like record producers and like that world's kind of dying down, but like the pop star told what you have to do.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift suffered a lot of that throughout her story. But I think it's your job to continuously innovate. And you know what? If you're a Tom Petty and you want to write the same shit over and over again for like however many albums,
Fucking love Tom Petty.
but you know what? If that's who you are, then do it.
Yeah.
But if that's what you feel all the way through, do it.
Yeah.
But, if Tom Petty got to his last album and said, I'm going to fucking write a metal album because that's what I need to do,
yeah,
then he would do it.
Yeah.
And, it's, I think I have more respect for that. Like, I don't have to like it. I don't have to like it to know that you are a committed artist, committed creative, committed musician, whatever it is. I think it's important to know that you need to be present with how you're feeling and what you're doing. You need to pour yourself into it because that's going to be itself. Because once you finish it and release it in whatever format it is, it becomes the world's.
Yeah, it's
not
everybody
yours
else's. Yeah.
Which means that you don't have the burden anymore and you need to move on.
Yeah.
And if you move on and you create the same stuff, that's great. Most people do. That's a good thing. There's nothing less or better. But if you need to change, you need to change.
For you, it's really about authenticity and somebody really
Yeah.
committing themselves to something that they actually feel passionate about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like, I know some artists that only release music. They don't perform live for exactly what I just said. They don't have the capability of pulling it off. Fine. Go for it.
Yeah.
But when you step on stage, like, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And it's like you said something earlier, like, people like, oh, this is what I want to do. They own it. Like, you can own what you want, and I appreciate people owning up to what they want in life and who they are. Mm-hmm. But if you're owning up to it as if that's what gets you the attention, then fuck off.
Yeah.
Because, like, I see that a lot too. Like, oh, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I'm just like, this is who I am. And then you go and see them, like, dude, have you practiced a day in your life?
Yeah.
Like, have you even, like, listened to yourself? Have you surrounded yourself with the right people to tell you the truth? Or have you surrounded
who will
yourself,
say this is not good yet?
or have you surrounded yourself with people that completely feed this crap ego that's
Right.
leading to more crap?
Which more often than not is the case.
More often than not, yeah.
Because I think that people are very I think there's, I don't know, this is hard to talk about, but people are very sensitive's not the right word.
Maybe it is.
But you know what I mean? It's like I feel that it is very important as a creative person in any endeavor that you choose to embark on. Mm-hmm. Like, you need to have somebody in your life that will tell you suck in a nice way. It doesn't have to be super brutal. I'm just saying somebody who will be honest with you when you're coming up, who's not just like blowing smoke up your ass. And
most people will blow smoke up your ass because they love you.
Right. And I feel like people are not very interested in the truth. They're interested in what feels good in the moment.
I think, yeah, absolutely.
Showing a piece of work and wanting people, like, obviously artists, this was one of the questions that I had for you, is like, I know for a fact artists don't just create for themselves. Yeah, like, if I couldn't do what I do, I don't know how I would live. Like, I have to do it, but at the same time, it's not a solo endeavor for me. Like what you were saying, you write music and then you put it out in the world and it becomes everybody else's.
Yeah.
Like, that's an important part of the process for me. I'm not acting for myself. Like, you're not creating music necessarily just for yourself. It's to share. It's to share with other people and to connect with other people. But, like, how do you manage, I guess, like,
not getting stuck in feeling like you're the greatest thing in the world?
Yeah, or, yeah.
And that's a normal feeling. We all feel it. There's highs and lows, man. I mean, and it's important to feel those. I think the idea of having someone that has the guts to tell you suck, that idea is important. You shouldn't have someone in your life that's telling you suck. I think the better thing to search for is have the guts as yourself to go out and find someone that is better than you that you can think about when you're not around.
Right. Find
someone that's so good at what they do, and say I'm playing in the studio by myself and I'm playing, that I can think like, man, what would Charlie think of this chord progression? Yeah. What would Jimmy Page have to say about the way I organize this guitar composition?
Yeah.
And like, make sure you keep those people in your mind.
Yeah.
Like, you're never alone. Mm-hmm. Because that will have a lot more progress for you as an artist. Mm-hmm. But yeah, sometimes people need to be put in their place. But I think oftentimes people getting put in their place comes from strangers, comes from going out there and putting themselves out there and getting roasted back. Which
sucks. Yeah.
I think a lot the place I went to where that guy was performing.
Yeah.
He only plays there, and there's a reason he only plays there.
Right. Yeah.
I have played empty, and I mean fucking empty bars.
Yeah.
In LA on like a Monday night.
Yeah.
And it is the most humiliating, hurtful experience ever. It rips you so hard.
Yeah.
And it's something that, they say pay your dues. There's things that you don't have to feel that way, but I'll tell you what, I'm glad I experienced those shows. I'm glad I fucking practiced and worked and drove all the way down there 2 hours just to get there. Nobody's there. I mean, empty bars.
It's interesting because that's an experience that I know you wouldn't wish on anyone.
No, it's terrible.
But at the same time, it's made you who you are now. So it's like when you're looking back at those things retrospectively, this is sort of on the topic of what we were talking about before, where, you're listening to interviews with people and they're very much so in a state of success. and then everything that they're sort of talking about is
their
from that
successful
mind.
perspective.
Yeah, is their successful perspective. But it's like those times when you were doing that sucked. It was awful. It was a pride swallowing siege.
Oh man, I cut gigs like almost in half to a quarter of the length. I was like, why the hell am I here?
Right. But it did something for you that no one can take away. Like, it's an important part of the journey, I think. Like, I guess on top of that,
I can still smell the bar.
really, when you think about
I
it,
remember the stickiness of the floors, the color of the lights, the backdrop, the bartender, who was the only person there, by the way.
oh fuck,
The smell of it, the tabletop. I remember everything about it.
yeah,
And I've done a few of them, but there was one that was
sticks out.
I'll never forget the rest of my life.
yeah.
It was, and it's something I like to think about it from time to time.
What does it provide for you when you think about it?
It's a reminder that is something that can happen at any level of success. Mm-hmm. It's a reminder that what I do is meant to be shared.
Yeah,
And to do it for no one is not worth it. Because I can feel my feelings without a guitar.
right.
And I can talk about my feelings without a studio. I chose this because it connects with masses.
Yeah,
And that's a commitment I made. I'm not going to turn my back on that. And that's what people don't understand. You made a commitment because you can feel your feelings without any of this stuff.
Yeah.
You're choosing to share it this way. And it reminds me that I made that choice.
Yeah.
And that I want to have an audience and I want to play for people because I get to share that experience with them.
yeah,
And yes, sometimes it's worth it to play for one person, but I'd rather play for 1,000.
Yeah.
And I'd rather make 1,000 of them feel important along with myself.
yeah,
It's a constant reminder. It's also a reminder that I'm allowed to put myself to a certain level and say, you know what, I'm not going to play gigs like this.
right.
I'm allowed to say it's not worth my time. I'm allowed to say that I'm not going to pay to play.
Yeah,
And it kind of let me have some respect for myself.
I love that.
But I can tell smell, sticky floors, polka dot things. I mean, high tables. There was a glimmering backdrop.
A glimmering backdrop.
Yeah.
Wow.
Man.
Wow. Okay, so when you say that you would rather play for 1,000, so this is what I wrote down. Give me an idea of what percentage of your playing is solely for you and what's for an audience. So I don't, like I just said, I don't believe that we create as artists. You don't create solely for yourself. But how much weight do you put on other people's opinions of your music? Or is it mostly just whatever you're feeling in that time period, you're creating that, and then fuck how it's received?
So how much of my playing is for me and how much of it is for the reaction?
Yeah. Or the reaction, like any kind of that feedback.
I'll say this. 0% of what I do is to make me feel good. It's necessity.
Yeah.
I cannot live my life without playing the guitar.
Yeah.
I cannot live my life without music. I just can't. And it's not me being like, oh, I'm emotional. Like, I will literally wither away and die.
Yeah.
I would rather not live. It's a necessity. If I try to avoid it, I will get sick. I've done it before. My body will cramp up. I will get sick. My mind will have dark thoughts. I'll fall apart because it's a necessity.
Yeah.
It's bigger than me.
Yeah.
It's bigger than all of us. And if we have the ability to channel it, it's not our choice. And it never was your choice.
Yeah.
You need to accept it and deal with it because that's your life.
Yeah.
Do I enjoy playing? 100%. I fucking love doing it. I love that that's the case.
Yeah.
I think practice is for me because I want to be better. I think it's very much for me.
Okay.
It's not really a creative flow. It's more like I need to practice because I want to be better. I want to feel more freedom. So that part of it is definitely for me, I'd say. But the reaction, I think when I write the music, the reaction is important. But I also do believe that people are rarely honest with you to your face. I think what they feel is theirs and what they share with you is surface level, which is good, which is okay. And if they, oh, hey, that song sucked, or hey, I really like that song. But we feel so many emotions with music. I think all of it is for an impact. I want it to impact somebody. Yeah. I want them to feel something. And it doesn't have to be profound. Sometimes it can be. but I want them to feel like, you know that feeling when you listen to a great song and you feel like you're in another world? The truth is you're not in another world. You're more present than you've ever been in your life. You feel like you're in another world because all of a sudden your entire being is so aligned with like the universe or whatever that it's almost like you have the power of gods. Like you have this infinite power, and it feels so freaking good.
Yeah.
In that moment, the next great idea can happen. In that moment, I mean, people become like literal superheroes in those moments.
Yeah.
That's why music feels so good.
Yeah.
If I can provide that, then I want to do it. Now, that's a bold statement to say I can provide that, but if I'm channeling stuff and I'm feeling this stuff, I practice my ass off. I work hard to know these chords. You know, I pay attention to whether the song's good or not. I critique it like crazy, so that it can be something that I can channel and reach more people with.
Yeah.
So I think all of it is for everyone. I mean, I do it because I have to. I don't have a choice. But like, and I do practice for me, but the songwriting and the performing, all stuff, 100% for the people.
How do you, because I'm a person that has stage fright, which we've talked about a lot.
Which is hilarious because you're a successful actress. Like, honestly, I can get on stage in front of the entire world. The entire world could be in one crowd and I could talk into a microphone.
I don't know how you do that.
If you put 3 cameras around me, I'd be like, ugh!
Well, there's 2 right now.
These are camcorders. These are not like big, like the whole, like, I don't,
But I guess for me, in the experiences that I've had, I've been in front of like 30,000 people one time, which was terrifying. Like I actually blacked out. I mean, I've also been in like more intimate settings where it's lesser people. When there's cameras there, for me, I'm trained to ignore them, like to see them, but you pretend that all of that's not there. When you're a musician and you're on stage and you're trying to share something as personal as music can be, that instantaneous response is what scares the shit out of me. Because when you think about it, with my job, I don't see people saying anything about what I'm doing. It's a few people that we trust each other, and that's where the decisions are made, and then it's out in the world, right? But when you're a musician, you're instantly getting that feedback. You are seeing on people's faces, you're feeling the energy, and for me, like, that energetic exchange is a lot for me. Like, I can feel the eyeballs on me, and it makes me feel very overwhelmed. Do you feel that at all, or are you the person that's like energized by that? Are you like, what is the feeling that you get when you go on stage?
Before I answer, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If you went on stage and everyone's looking at you, what if you went on stage and everyone was looking away and didn't care? How would you feel?
Probably pretty shitty. Yeah.
Which one would you prefer?
Everybody looking. Yeah.
Now, I like when artists are authentic on stage.
Yeah.
But there's a time and place for sensitivity and vulnerability. When you're creating, when you're writing, be sensitive, be creative. But when you step on stage, you have rule number 1, you got to entertain.
Yeah.
Rule number 1. That's why you have to be practiced. That's why you have to have everything on point. That's why you have to be ready to go.
Yeah.
In order to entertain, you have to be comfortable. And you have to host. You have to host these people. For me, the more the merrier, the better I am.
That's amazing.
I like to grab the attention, not because I want the attention, but because if this music is causing enough reaction, causing enough, eyes on me or eyes on focus, it means that something's working.
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling this shit too. I'm literally feeling the vibration against my body, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm getting it more than anybody else is getting it, always. And that's something, and if I can get those people anywhere near what I'm feeling, then 100%. I like going on stage. I love being on stage. It's the most comfortable place in the world for me.
That's very
100%.
interesting.
A reason I asked the question before I answer this, because I've played in front of like crowds that just had no interest, to the point where like there's jokes going on that people were talking so loud you could barely hear me, and I play freaking hard.
Yeah. It's
humiliating. I think the best piece of advice, though, that I would say is everyone is this far away from quitting on you all the time. When you're on stage, everyone is this far away from quitting on you.
Yeah.
Don't let them. And if they do, how far away are you from quitting on yourself?
Yeah.
That's why we practice.
Damn, HYG.
Yeah. But it's the truth. It's the truth.
Yeah.
I think...
That's a very good way to explain the relationship, because I think audience performer relationship is kind of complicated to discuss.
Well, you also, I mean, it's also one of the things, like, you have to go out and you have to play shows at different places, as many as you can. Not even to pay your dues, whatever. I mean, I when I'm a freaking multimillionaire, and when I'm selling records or whatever, when I'm number one stream, I'll tell you pay your dues, whatever. That's what people do.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and tell you to pay your dues, because I'm not saying any of this shit worked for the success story. In my eyes, I'm more successful than I could ever be.
Yeah.
It's all uphill, man. Like, this is all great, like, just extra. I love what I do.
Yeah.
What I can say is, though, like being in a relationship, you get to know someone.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were dating someone and you got to see them, you got to talk to them, interact with them once a month for an hour.
Yeah.
And in that 1 hour, you had to find a way to connect and read them and get an experience. How would you act? You need to know how to read the audience. You need to know what kind of audience. You need to have so prepared that when you step in front of it, it's like, okay, they're not vibing with this. Am I just going to keep doing it and let them, badger this into the ground, or am I going to change things up? Am I going to throw a jam in? Am I going to shred? Am I going to sing a softer song? Am I going to, sing a cover? Am I going to, talk to the audience? Am I going to tell a joke?
Yeah.
And there's things like that. That has to become second nature. That has to become something you look forward to.
Right.
You want to, I mean, walking into a room full of strangers is the greatest feeling in the world as a stage performer. You have to feel that. If you're walking into a room full of your friends and family, that's good, because I still do that from time to time.
Yeah.
Like, that's good. But if you can find one stranger, let alone 100 strangers, man, forget drugs. I've done many drugs,
get a rush from
but there's no drug on the planet that can match that shit.
Yeah.
It's like being in the wild. I used to make a joke. It was like picking up girls. Girls can always sense when a guy's nervous.
Yeah.
They can, like, if you go up to a girl and try to hit on her or like talk to her, you slip up even the tiniest little bit, they smell it.
Yeah.
And they rip you a new one, and guys are like, oh man, my confidence. I had friends growing up. This was like the story out here. I'm like, and I got a rush for it. I used to go, like, talk to girls everywhere.
Yeah.
Not because I wanted anything out of it, or I just liked it.
Yeah.
There was a no hesitation factor. I couldn't. I had to be fully there. I had to be me, and it was forced.
Yeah.
Or else I was going to be crushed. And that's why I love the stage so much, because there's no hesitation. There's just that moment.
Yeah.
It's everything you've got all the time. It's like a bunch of lions waiting to bite you. It's fucking rush, man. It's so good.
If I could harness any of that, we'd be in good shape. Okay, now I want to ask you, what is the biggest lesson that you learned in 2019?
Oh, the biggest lesson I learned in 2019.
It could be about you as an artist or just as a person. What's the biggest lesson you learned?
I'm going to think for a second here. There's a few of them. I think the biggest lesson I learned is don't go running to the things that made you comfortable once. The more you chase what is the right thing to chase, the more you go after what you want, and the more passion you feel, the harder it's going to get. Not because it's supposed to, but that's just how it works.
Yeah.
And it's not that the tasks become harder, it's that you want it more.
Yeah.
You always want it more. The more you get closer, you start to want it more.
Yeah.
And you open up to a lot more chaos.
Yeah.
But we're people, we're human, and we get tired emotionally. And at our low points, when we can't seem to get out of them, instead of turning to drugs or anything like that, anything numbing, we oftentimes will convince ourselves that there was once something that comforted me in a certain way, and I'm sure if I had that right now, it would fix the problems. Don't do it. It's never going to fix it. It's only going to take you back to a place of you're not there anymore.
Right.
You know, money's not going to fix anything. Certain people aren't going to fix anything. Someone saying the right thing isn't going to fix anything. There's nothing to fix. You just want something really bad, and it's okay to be beaten up.
Yeah.
But like I said about quitting, like everything and everyone is this far away from quitting on you.
Yeah.
Don't quit on yourself.
Yeah.
I think the most important lesson is that just to not go running back to things that make you comfortable.
Yeah. That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. And because it is really hard in the moment because this is another thing that people don't talk about is like the better that you get at something and the further along that you get on the path, like you said, it does get harder and the pressure is more and there's more eyeballs on you and there's like all of these other things that come into this dream that you've built for yourself.
Sure.
Being okay with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
With sitting with it sometimes. Like that's a very important lesson. Because nobody's good at it all the time. But I think just being cognizant of like discomfort is a part of the process and it's really okay. It's okay. Like you said, it's okay to get beat up.
Yeah. And you know, you should.
And you will.
Yeah. Well, it's like an opposing force. You know, the more you push on something,
yeah,
the heavier it's going to feel. You know, imagine going up to a brick, like a building, and like putting your hands on it. You can't tell how sturdy it is. And then you start pushing all your might into it. And of course, it's not moving, but you're putting so much energy, and all of a sudden that building feels heavier than it did when you were just laying your hands on it.
Yeah.
Building didn't change. How you were pushing, you know, the more you push into it changes.
Yeah.
You know, think about that. Like the more you push for something, the more you want something, the more you give to something, like there's always going to be resistance. There's always going to be an opposing force.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize that. And you know what, if the opposing force is going to be a reason to quit, then really, you know, sit down and question what you actually want. But, you know, it's okay to be beat up. It's okay to fall apart. That's why when, you know, you hear it so much, surround yourself with the right people. That's why that's important. Not because you need people to, you know, hype you up all the time, because sometimes you can't be there for yourself as well as you need to.
Yeah.
And some of us out there are alone. Like there's a lot of people that are out there that have nobody. My biggest advice to those people is it's scary to go out and share yourself because you're tired of being rejected or maybe you won't be understood.
Yeah.
There's something that you're doing that you're not recognizing right now in your life that you love doing.
Yeah.
That if you can realize it, share that.
Yeah.
Don't talk about yourself. Share that. I guarantee you it'll lead to something.
Absolutely.
I think people you don't have to talk about who you are all the time. People are afraid. But there's, you know, someone like maybe you're at home writing, you know, mystery novels.
Yeah.
Maybe you're, you know, making origami. Find that thing that you like to do. Don't think about how successfully, but start letting people know you do it.
Yeah. And just being aware of or becoming aware of what lights you up.
Yeah.
Is huge for your life. Just because it's, you know, again, it's not about the outcome. Because you have no idea what the outcome will be. Like, you didn't, when you were 3, you weren't sitting there being like, you know, when I'm 24, this is X, Y, and Z is going to be in place or whatever. You didn't think about that. It just lit you up inside.
Yeah.
And then you just wanted to do it all the time.
Hell yeah.
And there's nothing, I think, to add to that, it's like there's nothing that's really stupid if that's what makes you feel happy and content.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of, obviously, people have a platform now because of social media that they could just say whatever to anyone. But, like, I never knock anybody for being interested in something, even if I don't get it. It's like, that's a really lucky thing. There are so many people that are just completely unaware of anything that they're passionate about. And that breaks my heart. You know, like, I feel lucky, and I know you feel lucky that you've identified the thing that makes you feel alive.
Yeah, I mean, it's and that's the thing, is like we can't relate to people that don't that have never felt passionate about something. But that's kind of like a big part of the podcast, which is like why I started, is to make people understand like we're all creative. Yeah, I know it sounds super cliche, but even on the smallest, tiniest, almost microscopic level, if you can find something that, like you said, lights that fire for a split second, pay attention to it.
It's such a simple concept, but it is so hard sometimes.
Yeah.
to just know that that feeling is enough to start something. You know, because there's, like you were saying earlier, there's just so much advice flying around by all these motivators and whatever, but it really is that simple. Is paying attention to yourself and being aware when you get that feeling. And it could be the tiniest thing, or other people could think it's stupid, and it doesn't matter. If that's what brings you alive, like, that's absolutely what you should be doing and what you should be following.
I mean, in the social media thing, like, just because you post something and like you get responses doesn't mean that's what you're lit up about.
No, not at all.
And I feel like that's what's becoming an issue, is like a lot of the posting, a lot of like, oh, I'm starting a art page, I'm starting a this page. It's like, I'm glad, you know, people want to share, but are you freaking stoked on that? Now, don't get me wrong, you don't have to be stoked on it every day, because
right.
You're not going to be, but like if like today was your last day, is that what you would do?
Yeah.
Is that what would you spend your time doing?
I don't think people think like that often enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I obviously can take it too far, and I don't know if you do the same thing, but I can be incredibly morbid, because that's what sort of keeps me in that headspace where I'm just like, well, fuck it, we're all gonna die. So.
Oh yeah, I tell myself all the time.
Yeah. Like, what if you die? It's not good, because it's a lot, but like, I do get into different phases where I'll wake up every day and be like, what if this is the last thing? What are we going to do today? What if, you know, something bad could happen tomorrow and I could be gone? Like, I don't want to be, my biggest fear is waking up one day being 80 years old and thinking about all the things that I didn't try because I was scared.
Yeah.
What is your biggest fear?
My biggest fear, I think in regards to that concept, for me, is I could die at any moment. And I lived my life the way I wanted to. I did it the way I wanted. And if anybody out there doesn't really have like that special thing, their number one passion or whatever it is, you know, us like us crazy artists or whatever, could you die right this second? And could you leave behind like, I lived my life the way I wanted? It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. I did what I wanted.
Yeah.
I did. I do every day.
Yeah.
Now, there's obviously things you don't want to do that you have to do, but who I am, I mean, was I myself? Did I do those things? Like, and if you're not, you know, start.
Well, I think,
because the truth is, nobody freaking cares.
Yeah.
Nobody actually cares as much as you think they do. No one gives a shit what you're doing on vacation. No one gives a shit how much money you're going to make. No one gives a shit if you're the best guitar player or the worst guitar. No one actually cares. And if they do, it's for that split second, and then they go home and then they have their own life to live.
Yeah.
So whose time are you actually wasting?
Yeah. And I think the other piece of it that I've heard a lot is that, you know, when you were saying you're always this close to, like, people are always this close to giving up on you and not to give up on yourself. Like, I think that people get really wrapped up in timelines. And, you know,
I'm supposed to be here at this time.
And when it's just allow yourself, well, especially with cancel culture, is like nobody's allowed to evolve anymore. You know, like, we're not rewarding people for being like, hey, 10 years ago I was kind of a dirtbag and I've grown and evolved and now I'm not that person anymore. And everybody just turns around and be like, you know, well, fuck you, because 10 years ago you did that, instead of looking at the new person. It's like, don't do that to yourself.
That's
and
profound.
Be willing to say, I don't like this, or, you know, I do like this, and these things need to change. Like, don't be afraid to change. Like, you can, every passing moment is a chance to turn everything around. It just takes that split second.
I like that, because I think there's a huge difference between, you know, giving up has the implication that you never tried in the first place.
Yeah. If
you decide to change your mind, you're allowed to change your mind.
Yeah.
And it's okay. You know, but if you never tried, like, if I decided, like, you know what, I want to be a rock star, but I'm giving up, and I never picked up a guitar, that's giving up. That's legitimately giving up.
Yeah.
You know, but people that say, like, oh, that person just gave up along the way, it's like, well, did they give up, or did they just change their mind? Now, don't get me wrong, people give up all the time.
Yeah.
But when you look at yourself, the way you're talking about, like, I agree. Like, you have to look at yourself and say, it's okay to change my mind.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter what anybody else's perception of that is, because it is your life and it is your time and it is your timeline. Like if you're the person that thinks very linearly. I don't know if it's a word. It is difficult to feel permission to shift.
Yeah, permission. That's a big one.
But you don't need it. Like that's illusory in itself too. Is like you don't need it. You can give yourself that permission to just shift and change. Like,
well, the other thing is, I think the ability to give yourself permission comes from, seeing somewhat clearly at yourself. People have a hard time looking at themselves in the mirror, because it's humility. And like I said earlier, the hardest thing for anyone to do is face their own humility. Fear itself is not a big deal.
Yeah.
It's the humility that we feel. And being able to look at that and grow from that means you're able to look at yourself. And facing your own humility doesn't mean that I fucked up, I'm giving up. It means that you look that you did something wrong in your own eyes, because that's what humility is.
Yeah.
You did something wrong according to your moral compass, but you're ready to change that.
Yeah.
That's where giving up comes into play. That's where changing comes into play.
Right.
Yeah.
But like sort of what you were saying earlier too is that, it's one thing to take accountability and responsibility over your journey and to self-reflect and say, I don't like this anymore. I'm changing my mind about this. There's a huge chasm between that self-accountability and just beating the shit out of yourself for making a mistake, because making mistakes is human. We make them every day. It doesn't have to be that dramatic in somebody's mind. I do that a lot. Okay, you're getting to a level now where you're just abusing yourself because you're a human being and something didn't go the way you would have preferred. Yeah. But you tried and you showed up and it didn't pan out the way that you wanted to. Like, it's fine to say to yourself, oh, I made a mistake, or I don't want to do that again. That didn't feel right.
Yeah.
There's a huge chasm between that and being like, you piece of shit, like, you should give up, you should stop, you're a failure. Like, that sort of self-talk is way different than what we're talking about with taking accountability for.
Yeah, huge difference.
Yeah.
I think...
And I don't think a lot of people understand that.
I did a Q&A episode. The first one I did was by myself, and someone asked... I think it was a question about the inner critic or something like that. And I made this, and I stand by this. There's a difference between your inner critic and the inner monologue.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And you need to recognize the difference, and you need to be able to separate the two. Appreciate both, but like your inner monologue isn't your inner critic. Mm-hmm. Your inner monologue isn't this voice judging you. Your inner monologue is something that you are creating, mm-hmm. and you have full power over. So if you have full power over this, and you're creating something that's hurting you and beating yourself up, I think you need to ask yourself, am I healthy mentally? Am I healthy physically? Am I healthy in my life? Or are there other parts of my life, other things that I need to work on in order for me to achieve this thing that I want?
Right.
And I think that's the biggest mistake that, especially in a creative world, we all grow up and we all know no one's perfect. No parents have raised their kids perfectly. Mm-hmm. No one grows up to become the perfect person. And one of the best parts about life is being able to go back and like, hey, these are things I need to correct. That's what growth is.
Yeah.
So being a creative person and being an artist, or anybody that wants to share anything, you have to go to these vulnerable places. And if you're beating yourself up, you have to realize in order to get to what you want to share, you have to fix this person. Fix is not the right word. You have to grow this person. And you have to recognize that, hey, if I'm beating myself up and I have full power over this voice in my head, then something's wrong with how I feel about myself. What caused this? Mm-hmm. Or even better, how do I start incorporating daily activities or things, whether it's meditation or going to the gym or just anything, to start reminding myself that I have control over that voice and I can make it whatever I want.
Yeah.
So I think we need to recognize that we have control over the inner monologue. We have full control, and we need it should be nice, it should be encouraging, it should be everything we want it to be. Mm-hmm. Because our inner critic is something we need to listen to, like it's going to roast us.
Yeah.
And having the inner monologue, having that inner self that takes care of us, allows us the capability to look at the criticism and grow from it.
Right.
But if you're, it's crazy to me because I beat myself up. We all do it. but we have full control
Oh, I
over
know.
what we tell ourselves.
Yeah. But that's what's, I mean, you were saying it earlier too, is that that's the part of it that is exhausting, is because if you've become accustomed to having a parrot brain, you know, that's just repeating and regurgitating a bunch of negative stuff that's either been, you know, said to you or you know, said around you, and it's something that you've absorbed, like, it takes a lot of work and a lot of discipline to retrain your brain to be your friend, to be more of your friend than your enemy, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
You know, when you're trying to switch that over and take control and take responsibility and realize, like, oh, I can change how this voice sounds in my head, what it's saying to me. It takes so much work and it's hard, and I think that's why.
Sorry, real quick, can you touch the mouse pad real quick?
Yes.
Is it clicking? It did not die just now.
I think it died.
Is it not clicking?
Uh-uh.
Alright, well, real quick. Sorry, switch places. Hold that thought, though, the parrot brain. We're going to keep this.
Okay.
Oh my god, it did die. It did.
Wait, did it, like, totally die?
Yeah, my computer died. How did that happen? It was plugged in.
I don't know. When did
It's okay,
it die?
I'll use the audio from the cameras.
When did it die?
Like halfway through that last. This is not happening. You can talk to the cameras now.
I'm just going over the questions to see what else I have left.
Oh my god.
It was plugged in and everything?
Yeah.
Damn!
Well, those of you listening, you're listening to camcorder audio right now, so if it sounds bad,
That's why.
that's why.
We had technical difficulties.
What is happening?
Did you get an error message?
Okay.
Why don't you just stay on that side? Just in case. Just in case.
All right, I think we back up. We're back up.
Hello?
Do you want to switch back?
Hello? Do you want to switch back or you want
We
to stay
should.
there?
Yeah, we should switch back. I'll see it from over there.
Okay.
And we're going back to normal audio.
Okay.
Sorry to roast everyone like that.
Oh, snaps.
It shows it's charging next to the number, right? Up in the right-hand corner.
Yeah. It's at 1%.
Oh, man. We're living on the edge here. I like it.
We really are.
Wow. That's never happened before. It was plugged in. How did it not charge?
I don't know.
Well, I can use the audio from the cameras. It'll be fine. I don't edit anything, so that everyone's going to listen to all of this.
All of this? Fantastic.
That's right, guys. Authenticity all the way through. A lot of people have an issue with that, by the way. Anyway.
Do they really?
Well, guess. They're just like, oh, what if I say something stupid? I'm like, yeah, that's the point.
Then
Don't say something stupid. Anyway, you were talking about the idea that you are...
Oh, when you were talking about control, right? That's the part that you have control. You have control over your inner monologue.
Mm-hmm. And
Where were we going with that?
Well, you were talking about having like a parapet, like if you're just constantly regurgitating everything you heard.
Yeah. That it's exhausting. I think that's what I was talking about. That's why a lot of people give up on it, is because it takes a lot of work to actually make your brain your friend if you've had...
Yeah.
Which I feel like everybody has had that. Like everybody's got their shit that they've been indoctrinated with that they wish...
Well, it's also
never had, because it's affecting how they interact in the world.
Yeah.
And it takes so much discipline to get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, like I don't have to be afraid of what I'm going to say to myself anymore. It's hard.
You know, it's I feel like that relates so much to the fact that we live in an era that we see everyone else all the time. With social media, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I think the reason why we're so naturally jumping to beating ourselves up, because the time that we should spend looking inward, we're looking at everyone else. And not only are we looking at us, we're looking at everyone else's fake.
Yeah, everybody
image.
else's.
But and the other crazy thing is, like, you can have this conversation with anyone and they'll agree, yeah, it's not true. But yet we all still are affected by it, like we're missing out on something. Like, we know it's not fully authentic. We know we're not sitting with that person. We know we're not vibing with them. and we still seem to take it as a belief, like that's really what it is. And then we start beating ourselves up in our mind, and then we have to remind ourselves it's not real and that we can be nice to ourselves. But it's like,
but that's what I'm saying, is
exhausting. Process is insane.
It's exhausting because you can't just like snap to it. It's very weird.
Like, oh, that's just social media. Like, well,
I feel the exact same way, because I have to talk to myself, especially when it comes to social media stuff. I have to talk myself out of that whole emotional rabbit hole, which I feel like a lot of people are experiencing too. I know that I'm not like alone in that. I'm just saying,
dude,
the process of like being on Instagram or whatever and scrolling and feeling like crap, and then getting to the place where I'm like, oh, okay, I'm good again, because is a huge time period, because I'm having to tell myself what you just said, like, that's their highlight reel. This is a separate person. You don't even know them in real life. Who cares? Like, it takes an active participation to get out of that psychological.
Well, then it makes me wonder, like, you talk about active participation, like, it's your mind. You should be actively participating all the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if that's exhausting us, are we spending enough time actually using our mind properly? You know? So there's a lot of questions that come into play when it comes to the idea of,
Mi scusi.
But there's a lot of questions that come into play when we're talking about the idea of, you know, us having to snap back into it. And maybe social media is a blessing in a sense that it's the one thing that can pretty much yell at us like, hey, we're not mentally strong as we thought we were.
It's a daily reminder, for sure.
So
because it makes me personally regress into whatever I experienced in middle school. Like that's
but here's the
what
crazy
I go
part
to.
though. Even back in middle school, like, if you removed social media, if you just went, like, I did a thing, I kind of went off for a little bit.
Yeah.
If you removed it, you might not feel as bad, but you didn't solve the problem.
No, you just...
It's like middle school. You may have gone out of middle school, but it doesn't mean that you could go back and handle it.
No.
You know, and
Are you kidding me now?
Like, that's the thing. It's like, we have to realize that just because we remove something out of our life doesn't mean that we got rid of the problem. We just removed the one thing that exposed a real issue. Are we going to do something about it?
Yeah, it's sort of like not keeping sweets in the house.
Yeah, you know, it's like,
it doesn't mean that, you know,
it doesn't mean that you're not going to gorge on chocolate if you for dessert
if
cake. If
anybody brings any of it to the house.
And that's the truth, you know, and like. Especially with social media, like when you look at it, you see things that people have. I like to read a lot.
Yeah.
Emerson is my favorite writer of all time.
Yes.
I recommended him to you the other day.
Yes, you did.
But his most famous essay that everyone's read is Self-Reliance, and I like quoting it because everyone, you know, knows it. Well, I like to think everyone knows it. It's his most famous one. It's really well written. It's phenomenal. It's just packed full of just juicy stuff. My favorite line in it is he says, envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide. And it's basically referring to the idea that every person that tries to go after what they want, there comes a time, he says, like, there comes a time in every man's education when he learns that envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide. And it's true. The idea that we envy something is literally, when you break it down, is pure, it's just us being ignorant to the fact that we have the capability to get what we want.
Right.
But we'd rather be envious because it takes work. Imitation is suicide. Well, if we see someone that we like I like James Hetfield, right? If I'm going to copy James Hetfield start to finish everything he's done in his life, that's suicide, because the only thing that gives us our uniqueness in life is our ability to make our choices.
Right.
And if we can remind ourselves that envy is just our ignorance, imitation is us giving, you know, suicide, it'll say, hey, I don't want to do everything you do. I don't want to be just like you. Yeah. Hey, I'm not going to sit here and all over you. I'm going to do what I think I can do for myself to get to a place that I want.
Right.
So there's that.
That's it.
You read it, man. Read some. Everyone go out and read. It's his essays, though. Ralph Waldo Emerson, his essays. Read his essays. They're all
man
guidance in life right there.
That was a gut punch right there. Oh boy. Wait, how many more questions am I allowed to ask you? How long is this?
We can go as long as. Is it charging? Is it at more than 1%?
Oh, girl. Yeah, 8%.
Okay, good. That means it's working.
Nice.
Oh, that's going to be a bitch and a half to put that
I'm so sorry.
camera audio in.
Why am I saying sorry? I didn't do it. But, like, also sorry.
You're the worst. Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
How could you?
I have good ones in here, but like some of them you've already touched on organically through conversation.
Organically.
What's this song? This is what I really want to know, because you actually a couple months ago put on your Instagram, you asked everybody what how did you phrase it? It was like, what song is really meaningful to you at this point in your life?
This was a while ago.
Yeah.
I did a selfie video. I remember this. This was a huge change for me in my life.
Yeah.
This was that. Remember when we talked about what changed in 2019?
Yeah. That was that time.
Song was right in the it was in the week that big. It was in the same week.
Okay.
That song ignited that feeling, ignited that lesson. By the way, the song is "I Guess I Just Feel Like John Mayer. Great song. Listen to it. Yeah. Because we all feel like he just said.
Wow. Okay.
Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
So what I was gonna say, what is a song that changed your life?
Oh man, that's a good question. That song changed my life in that time. It was necessary. It came out of nowhere. And it wasn't even, I mean, it was fairly new, but it wasn't like released that day or that week.
Right.
It just happened to come on the radio and it fucking ripped me. Just open and showed myself to me.
Yeah.
Songs that changed my life. Okay.
And why?
I have a list. My favorite song in the entire world ever is Achilles' Last Stand by Led Zeppelin. I'd listened to the song before, but I think I was 12 or 13. I was like 7th or 8th grade. I think it was 8th grade. And I'm not going to go into details, but something had happened and I was paranoid. I was stressed out. Couldn't tell if I wanted to vomit, cry, or punch a hole in the wall. I was afraid I was going to get in trouble. I mean, everything that a 13-year-old could have felt with a very traumatic situation times like a million. And I remember I was standing in my room and I was like holding my phone, just like pacing back and forth, and I had Zeppelin playing. And all of a sudden, Achilles' Last Stand came on. I've heard the song 100 times at this point in my life, right? And for that 10 minutes, I was invincible. I was a superhero. Everything I did was justified. Yeah. Who I was the most important thing in the world. And man, I just even talk about, I remember that feeling. Yeah. And it was perfect. It was perfection. When people say, can you describe perfection? I think of that song in that moment. Yeah. That song changed my life. Another song that totally Glass Animals, The Other Side of Paradise. It's on that whole album of How to Be a Human Being by the Glass Animals is, I think, one of the best albums ever created in history of music.
Never heard it.
Worth a listen.
Okay.
And read up on it. Anybody that listens to that album, read up on that album. Okay. So crucial. Fucking genius work of art. Okay. But The Other Side of Paradise, that song, when I first heard it, it's all about this like person that wants to become a rock star and leaves the hometown, leaves their love and goes out to find out. It's like, oh, they get caught up in the rush of being famous and this and that, only to regret leaving what they truly loved, kind of thing. It's kind of like that whole story. But the way, the production of it, the sounds, the lyrics, everything about it, in a sick way, it made me want it more. Because it was to the point where like I felt this song so much that I wanted to go out and fuck up and miss what I left behind just so I could feel the song more.
I've done that.
Like I wanted to go through that so much more just so I could feel this song even more.
But that's how romantic it was to you.
Oh my God, man! I just got the chills thinking. Yeah.
I love that you feel that same way, because I have songs like that, and I know when I need to feel something, like when I'm really needing. Music is everything.
Well, you once told me that you make playlists for your roles when you're getting ready for roles. So that's actually a big question. So like, same question to you. Like, what are songs that changed your life?
First of all, Elvis.
Okay, all right.
Just as a human being, changed my life when I was little.
It's a controversial statement, but
yeah,
very controversial statement. But yeah, go for it.
But Bob Dylan's "I Threw It All Away" was probably one of the first times that I ever sort of. I've always been a romantic person, even when I was little. Yeah. Like I've always
grandiose ideas.
Yes. Yeah. with everything.
I
With
feel you.
human beings, with career, with everything. That song was the first time that I remember feeling like I wanted to be involved with a boy.
Huh.
And it made me want to have my heart broken.
Isn't music... I mean, think about that. Music made you want to feel something you never even understood.
No.
Like...
Isn't that wild? Like, that's why I love hearing your connection to it, because I so relate with, like, I just want to go and, like, do a thing so that I can understand where Dylan was when he wrote that.
Have you ever seen the movie Almost Famous?
Yes.
The greatest line in that movie, maybe in of all movies for me, is one of the groupies sits down, the original groupies, with one of the bandmates, is looking at the new young groupies, and she's talking about like how they don't appreciate music, and she like looks at the guy and she says, "Have you ever listened to a piece of music and you've loved it so much that it physically hurts?"
Yes.
And I'm like, let me think about it. It made you want something you didn't even know existed.
I didn't understand.
You didn't understand it, but you wanted it.
It's weird too, because then obviously this is also the great part about music, and I'm sure you feel this way too, is like you can grow with the things with the pieces of music that you love. And then at different points in my life, similar songs have changed meaning for me. There's still like, it will always be a pivotal moment. That will always be a song that changed my life. But then, 20 years later, when I actually experienced like unrequited love, it wasn't as, I understood the pain, but it wasn't as romantic as I thought. Like, it was so...
Isn't that great, though?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you know a song is that's how what great songs are.
Yeah.
People like, how do you determine a great song? One of the ways, let me clear this, one of the ways to determine a great song is that alone, the ability to tap into something that is more than a detail.
Yeah.
The details come from our experiences.
Yeah.
The detail for you when you were a kid is, I want to go have my heart broken by a boy.
Yeah.
And then the same song years later made
a different
impact.
Yeah.
Because it allowed you to feel your life. It allowed you to fill in the details.
Yeah.
Now, I'm very back and forth with Bob Dylan. I think Bob Dylan was a great songwriter.
Yeah.
I think everyone else performs it better because I think he's a terrible guitar player and singer.
Well, this is what's interesting is that I don't listen to his music. So when I heard that song for the first time, I wasn't a Dylan fan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't about...
It was just a great song.
Yeah, it wasn't about him. Like, I didn't even know who sang it.
Yeah.
I believe that my dad played that for me.
Wow.
And so I didn't know. I just was like listening
it's
to
so
music.
Cool. What a great story. I freaking love that.
Yeah, but it's like... And you love movies too. So like music is obviously so important to that whole experience as well. And I don't know if people like...
I just interviewed Mark Leggett. He's a TV composer. Yeah. 2 weeks ago I did him. I mean, we talked about a lot of... It's incredible. It's something that people just never really sit down and think about.
They don't, because if you took the music out of a movie and it was just like me walking down a hallway, you'd be like, what's happening? What's trying to be communicated here? Like, music is everything. When people ask the question, would you rather go blind or deaf? Like, for me, I couldn't not have music. I feel like a part of my soul would die if I didn't have that, because I am so affected by it. It's crazy.
You want to know something sick? I think I'd rather go deaf.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
I know. I'm still... I've never shared that.
Yeah.
I'm still working on explaining it, but I know I'd rather go deaf.
Interesting.
I don't know. I don't know.
And you could... And based on what you said a little bit ago, like, that if you can't play your guitar,
I'd still
wither
play my
away.
guitar.
Yeah. But if you couldn't hear it, would you not care? Is it just the act of playing the guitar?
It's vibration against your body. Your body still feels it.
Yeah.
And plus, I've been playing long enough that I can get somewhat of an idea of what could sound good.
Dang.
But I'd rather go deaf.
That's wild.
I haven't quite put enough thought into figuring out why, but I think it has a lot to do with that if I wasn't able to see beauty, I wasn't able to look at the world for what it is in front of me, and have my own, then I'd only have my mind to look at, and I don't think I'm that great. I don't think I could just be stuck with my own mind for so long.
Now that you say it like that, I don't know if
it's it's scary, right? Imagine never seeing anything.
Like, don't want either of those things to ever happen. I'm just saying, like, I was just trying to communicate how much I love music.
Well, that's something I've thought about that a lot, though.
Yeah.
It's a heavy,
Yeah. Okay, so that's one of the songs that you gave 2.
Yeah.
So what is music to you then?
What is music to me?
Yeah.
Man, to me, something to be understood, I guess.
Yeah.
I think, music, it's sound vibration, right? Sound waves, physical existence.
Yeah.
Reality. As real as anything else. If anything, more real. It manipulates everything it touches. It vibrates it. It literally, it moves the space of something. Mm-hmm. Everything we understand is time and space. It moves things out of that.
Yeah.
But somehow it cures us.
It really does.
It cures our condition, our ability to, our condition to constantly need each other, to want to connect, to want to be intimate, to want to make more of ourselves, to want to hate, to want to hurt, to find purpose. It continuously cures that.
Yeah.
And we don't have to do anything. It just has to be there. And no matter what we do, it's pure. Music is untouchable. It's sound waves. We can't change that.
Yeah.
But we can create it. We can channel it. I think it's something bigger than anything we could ever fathom, and it just wants to be understood the way we want to understand each other. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't require as much as one person would from the other.
Yeah, it doesn't require it at all.
But if you dedicate, like musicians, if you dedicate your life to it, understand that it's this vast, infinite. You're never going to fully understand it, but if you can understand it for a moment and channel it, that's what music is to me. It's an impact. It's our connection.
Yeah.
It's our reason. It's the remedy to everything we constantly feel.
Oh yeah. Sometimes music is like the only reprieve you get in a day. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Just because it's that magical ability to transport you to anytime. Like when I listen to Elvis Presley, I always think about being little. That's how my parents taught me to make my bed, is to that. They got me a little tape. And so, just the fact that I could not remember that memory on its own, but you play Elvis, and like you said, when you were playing that show, and you can remember how that bar smelled, and you remember it's crazy how
it's your
intertwined
senses,
all of that is.
Well, think about, the sense
nostalgia.
of smell. Yeah, nostalgia, but like you smell something, it takes you back to a certain time, but like, and everything has its sense, but with music, it's not, you don't even hear it, but because it vibrates, your body vibrates. You're just resonating. Like you're literally changed than what you normally are.
Yeah.
In every way.
It's so magical.
But it's true, and it's scientific.
Yeah.
Everything about you changes for a moment.
It's so dope.
Out of place.
Yeah. I love
but
that.
It feels, we could go on that for hours, but.
Yeah. Okay, well, I want to end it with the question that you asked me when you ended my interview. What's advice that you would give? You gave really good advice already, so I don't even know why I'm asking this. But
my advice, no, I'm not some guru here. I'm not some smart, crazy person. I mean, I haven't been doing this my whole life. I'm not even, successful to most people in their eyes. I think my advice is, number one, no matter what you do, it's channeling who you are. So get to know that person. Number two, if you say you want something, it means you give 100%, not 99. It's okay to have hobbies. Those are 99s.
Yeah.
Number three, every day we're making commitments. When you step on stage, you make a commitment. When you wake up and put on your shoes, you make a commitment. Everything is commitment. Mm-hmm. Even on the most, I committed to wearing these shoes today. or for the next hour until I take them off. I committed to playing this show until it's done. I committed to running my scales. Know your commitments and have enough discipline to stand by them, because the infinite freedom of being a human being comes from mastering that skill.
Yeah. Word, dude.
Yeah. Practice.
You killed it.
That was my first interview, so.
You slayed it.
I hope so. I hope everyone liked it.
No, it's really good.
Thank you for doing this. This was so cool. By the way, everyone listening, Tina asked me to do this. I didn't reach out to her to do this. I've been waiting a long time for someone to because I've been so curious to try being a guest.
How
this
did
was
you feel?
Awesome.
Did
that
you
was a great
it?
interview. You had some great questions. That was awesome.
Good.
That was
I
awesome.
wasn't totally on top of my game, but this is also this is my first time interviewing somebody.
It's not easy, is it?
No, it's very difficult because I wanted to ask you like 8 questions with every answer that you had. I was like, oh wait, remember that he said that. Remember that. It's hard.
It's not easy.
Not that I thought it was easy at all.
No, I know, but like you start to realize, like, wait a minute. Yeah.
Well, you're rad.
Rock and roll.
Hey, Faye.
Peace.
Pass.